Welcome to Durango, Colorado, in the 1991 Champion International Whitewater Series. Hi again, everybody. I'm Drew Goodman. This weekend, we will see some of the top international competitors mixed with some of the top local paddlers in the western United States, competing in slalom in 4 Olympic events: men's and women's kayak, and also men's single and double canoe. More on the canoe portion in a short while. This is the second stop in a 5-event series, which culminates in mid-August in South Bend, Indiana. Last week we got going in Vail, Colorado, so we already know who our top competitors are in each event. More than $14,000 will be dispersed at each stop to the top 8 competitors in each individual category. Now, located a little bit below us is the Animas River, and it's feisty these days because of the heavy snowfall over the winter. The course is some 400 meters in length with a gradient of 6 meters, and it is running very, very fast. Working alongside this afternoon, a gentleman who knows the river well, an expert himself, a former racer, Lamar Sims. And Lamar, in women's kayak, who do we look for?
Well, Kirsten Brown-Fleshman is paddling extremely well. A member of the U.S. team, she won commandingly in Vail last week, and this is a good course for her.
The men will be shooting for a gentleman from up the road in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. He won last week, Rich Weiss.
Well, Rich is a perennial U.S. team member. He won the series last year and won, as you said, last week. He is the top contender, but you've got to watch out for some of the other people in that class. It's a hot class. You've got Donald Johnstone from New Zealand. He was second last week, and U.S. team members Scott Shipley and Eric Jackson.
Now, in canoe, this is not the kind of canoe you might find in the local pond. A little bit different, isn't it?
Well, that it is, Drew. The canoe is the same length as the kayak. It's a little wider, but it looks almost the same. The difference is the athletes are kneeling using a single-bladed paddle.
We'll be looking for a Frenchman in men's single canoe, won't we?
Well, Thierry Humeau was a bronze medalist in the 1989 World Championships. Just missed making the French team this year, but is coming on strong and has positioned himself well in his pre-Olympic year.
And the men's tandem event?
We're looking for Scott Strausbaugh and Joe Jacoby from Bryson City, North Carolina. They are members of the U.S. team. They won this series last year in their class, and they're paddling well, but you've got to watch out for Michel Saidi and Jerome Duval from France.
This should be tremendously exciting. Some of the top international competitors going, and it serves as a precursor to the World Championships and the European Tour later on this summer, and of course Barcelona and the '92 Olympic Games right around the corner. We'll get going on the Animas River in Durango, Colorado, right after. Along with Lamar Sims on the Animas River. And as we look at our weather and course conditions, Lamar, what are the most important factors here?
Well, we've got 3, Drew. First of all, difficulty of the water, class 2-3, means we've got some good solid white water. The fact that there's no wind to blow the gates around, and the river flow. 3,000 cubic feet per second means that the water is down a little bit, but still good and pushy.
Now, earlier this afternoon, I had a chance to catch up with one of the favorites for the women, Kirsten Brown-Fleshman.
Kirsten, 23rd in the World Championships last year. How much have you improved in a year?
Oh, quite a bit, I think. I think I can do better this year. Last year I had an injury that sort of slowed me down. I think I can do better this year.
You spent a good portion of time in Costa Rica. What did you work on particularly?
Oh, whitewater skills, confidence, strength, all those things.
What does an MIT degree have to do with whitewater racing?
Well, it gives me a good background of analytical skills and with everything I do.
Okay, terrific. Good luck today.
Okay, thank you very much.
And the MIT graduate in political science won last week in Vail, followed by Joanne Woods, Kara Ruppel, and Eileen Ash. And we're underway. The first competitor making her way down the Animas River is Margaret Langford of Canada, a member of the Canadian national team. And as she works her way downstream, we'll give you an idea of what to look for in kayak. Lamar, we see green gates and red gates. What do they signify?
Well, Drew, we've got 25 gates hung over the course. The clock starts when the athlete leaves the starting area, stops when they cross the finish line. They must run each one of the gates in numerical order. The green and white gates are known as downstream gates, and those must be run in the direction of the current flow, downstream. The red and white gates are known as upstream gates, and there the athlete has to come down below them, paddle back up through the gate, and back out into the moving water. Now, the kicker is that if you hit one or both poles in a gate, 5 seconds will be added to your raw time. If you miss the gate entirely and are unable to paddle back up, as we watch Langford coming in nicely into an upstream gate here, if you're unable to negotiate it, 50 seconds added to your time. At the races of this level, if you miss or touch one gate, that can move you back in the standings a fair bit. Watching Langford come through here, she's a very strong paddler coming out of Canada. She trains with Richie Weiss from the United States, as a matter of fact. She's come on strong in the last couple of years. Didn't have a good race last week in Vail, but feels that this is her kind of course. As I said, strong paddler. She likes big water, and she just has a great time on this kind of water.
And she is working her way toward the latter section of the course. You see gates 15, 16, and 17. Is this similar to skiing, where you would call it a flush of gates?
Well, realistically speaking, you want to stay right on your line, just like skiing, the entire way down the course, and that's one of the things the racers talk about, is having a line and being on the line. You can see down here as we get into some of the upstreams where you've really got to work back upstream against the current, and the key to this race, or to slalom racing in general, is to stay high in the upstreams. That means to drive your bow in between the poles as you enter the upstream and drive out quickly in 1 or 2 strokes. You see Langford here looking like she's having a fairly good run down through the center part of the course, having to take a little bit of a backstroke there, and that's not what you want to do. You want to try and keep working on your forward strokes, your sweep strokes, and keep the boat speed up.
She negotiated that turn well, and she so far has a clean run going as she gets through gate 25 also cleanly, and she will sprint toward the finish line and set the pace for the other ladies here in women's kayak, in points to beat or seconds to beat, 174.98. Now here is Eileen Ash, who performed very well last week at Vail.
Well, as we watch Ash coming down and working down through the middle of the course, there's a tough break. You can see her touch the gate. We talked about that. That's going to be a 5-second penalty point. Let's see if we can see that again. All right, she's driving into the eddy here, the upstream, and you can see that the bow gets caught a little bit above the gate, the eddy water above the gate, that drives her into the pole, and that's going to cost her 5 seconds. As I said, 5 seconds in this kind of course, there are going to be a number of clean runs. Here's Joanne Woods from Canada coming down. 5 seconds can really move you back in the standings.
Joanne Woods fortunate to even be on the water today. She had a bit of a flu bug and spent all day Thursday in bed, and she didn't feel all that well this morning while warming up. Let's see how she performs. Joanne Woods.
All right, so you've got a tough set of offsets here from that gate you saw there, 21 to 22, and you can see that, again, watching in slow motion, she's driving over towards the next gate and is not able to really get her body underneath the pole. You get 5 seconds if you touch the gate with either your body, your paddle, or your boat. You can't touch it with anything, so that is going to cost her, on this, her first run. The athletes get 2 runs, Drew. We take the better of the 2 runs, and so if you have a touch like that, she'll get another chance. Watching Woods now on her sprint down to the finish.
176.66, so not quite as good as the time by Margaret Langford, about 2 seconds out. Here is our favorite. She won last week at Vail, Kirsten Brown-Fleshman. She is from Tacoma Park, Maryland, and she spent much of the off-season training in Costa Rica, and she has a bit of a problem early.
Well, looking at it from that point, that may be a call for the judges. From this angle, it looks like she may have missed the gate. The rules require that your body be in the gate when you cross the gate line. That is the imaginary line between the 2 gates. And a tough call there for the judges. Let's watch it again. As she drives into the gate, if that pole swings over her left shoulder, then she's going to be having problems and may take a 50 on that. All right, we're watching it there. And indeed, from this vantage point, I would have to call that a 50, which means that we've seen some very fast runs already. At least on her first run, she's not going to be anywhere near the top of the standings.
So Fleshman will have to put it back together and get ready for the second run. Here's how they stand after the first run. Langford with the time to beat the Canadian. We'll come back to Durango, Colorado in a moment.
Athletes in the Olympic sport of canoe and kayak racing with the goal of bringing home the gold in 1992. You can help ensure the success of the United States in Barcelona and beyond by supporting your local paddling club or the U.S. Canoe and Kayak team. Call 317-237-5690. Their talents. With world champion athletes in whitewater slalom and Olympic gold medalists in flatwater sprint, the potential for success in Barcelona is excellent. But these athletes can't do it alone. You can provide them with much-needed support through the U.S. Canoe and Kayak team. Call the United States Canoe and Kayak team, 317-237-5690.
Last week in Vail, here's how they finished in men's single canoe. Terry Humeau of France, who now makes his home in the United States, finished on top, and Bob Robison was in second position. We are set for our second run. The first run, Humeau led. He had the fastest time, then Strasbaugh, Norman, and Holmes. Keep in mind, if you have a faster second run, that's what will stand up. Kent Ford is currently on the Animas River. He's from Bryson City, North Carolina.
Well, we're watching now the C1, or as you said, the men's single canoe. Here the boaters are kneeling in the boat. They're using the single-bladed paddle. One of the things this does is allow them to get much farther out over the bow, great extension. However, of course, that means you also have a strong side and an offside. Watching Kent here working the ferry. Kent represented the United States in the late 70s and early 80s in international competition, gold medal on team competition, and has really been making a bit of a comeback as we're moving into the Olympic year. He is a very, very smooth paddler. We watch him now coming over the drop and driving into 12, and he's a little low in gate 12. Again, we want to talk about being high in the eddy, but he's able to keep his boat speed up as we watch him driving across into the next gate, and that's really critical.
You mentioned that he's been around for a while. Indeed, he is 33. Is that getting up in years for an athlete on the water?
Well, one of the things that we've noticed over the last several years that this is a sport where athletes are able to, with great technique, stay in the game for a number of years. A number of our top athletes are now in their late 20s and early 30s. Some of them have been in the game for 10 to 15 years.
Kent Ford appears to be having a pretty good run so far.
We're watching Kent come down now, and again you can see the great extension over the boat. He one-strokes the upstream. That's really pretty. Watch him as he comes through. He's a very, very smooth paddler, as I said. He's got good boat speed. He's a little bit off the pace over the last couple of races, and I'll be interested to see what his time is. Again, we just saw the times posted for the first run.
The U.S. Olympic Festival in Minnesota last year, he won the gold medal, 1:68.99, an excellent time. Actually, the second fastest time of the day to Terry Humeau in the first run. Here is Robison. Here is Bob Robison of Fairfax, Virginia. He had a very fast run in his first run, but he got a 50, which cost him, obviously, any chance of being in the top 4 after that first run.
Well, Bobby is a very skilled paddler, but also a paddler who's been around for a long time. He represented the United States in the late 70s and early 80s. He's been in this position before. He knows that it all comes down to this one run here, and so he's really going to try and put on a show. We watch him, he's looking real good through the middle part of the course, able to make that little move through the upstream and then drive across the ferry high, that ferry across that moving jet of water. You want to keep your bow pointed upstream. If not, you're going to wash down below the next gate. And he has got very nice move here, especially in the offset. A little bit of a bobble there, but it doesn't look like it cost him anything in his stroke rate, and he's now moving nicely in towards the upstream.
Robison has been doing this for a long, long time. You mentioned the late 70s. In 1977, at the age of 15, in the C1 World Championships, he finished in 4th place in Austria at the tender age of 15. Now 29 and still competing at the international level.
And we're watching Bobby towards his final sprint here and wait to see that time posted, because it looks like there's a great, great time, 1:59.95. That should move him into the lead.
That is our best time of the day. Here is the man to beat, however, Terry Humeau of France, who now makes his home in the United States. And he set the fastest pace in the first run.
Well, there's a great jet over there, and Terry is a little low coming into the upstream below it. He wants to try and drive right into the bow, drive the bow right into those gates there, and he was about 1 or 2 strokes down. That cost him maybe half a second, but watch the way he ends up in gate 12, right up in 12, and there's pretty paddling.
So important to set yourself up for the next gate, and Terry does it very, very well here.
Well, that's right, Drew. If you see him just drive his bow up a little bit coming across that jet, and that brings him over into that middle of the current and then in a good position for the next upstream. Now he's a little bit farther down the course now. We're watching him coming through here and into those offsets, and it looks like he's having a real good run through here. He's right on line in the offsets, driving into the upstream now. Look at how far over he gets. He should be able to one-stroke this a little low. Was not able to make the one-stroke, but still kept the boat speed up, and that's critical.
Humeau, a very gifted paddler. He was a bronze medalist in this classification in the '89 World Championships. He's married to American Donna Klodek, who is the #1 kayaker in the country right now for the ladies. He needs to beat 1:59.95. Can he do it? The sprint? No. He is about 6 seconds slower. So Bob Robison of the United States will win in 1:59.85, and then the Frenchman Humeau. And standing by, Lamar Sims with our winner.
Well, I think the main thing is I just concentrated on having a good solid run. I wasn't trying to go my fastest. I just wanted to have a good race. I've been having good races all year with the exception of usually one move per course, and today I didn't mess up anything. I just had a good solid run.
Outstanding afternoon for Bob Robison. We'll come back to Durango, Colorado on Prime Network in a moment. Durango, Colorado. Drew Goodman along with Lamar Sims, second year of the tour. $14,000 at stake here. This is the beginning of the second run for the ladies in the kayak. Margaret Langford of Canada had the fastest first run, but what is most important is having two good runs, because if you have a horrible run, you just wipe that out. All you're looking for actually is one run. So Langford wants to try to better that time that she had initially.
Langford's a little low in the gate there, and she had a good first run. Joanne Woods was a little faster, had penalties. Langford knows this going into her second run. The racers have had a chance to look at the leaderboard so that she knows that Woods has thrown in a faster time. What she's got to do is put that in mind. Coming nicely across the jet there, you see her drive her bow back up and out into the water rather than going downstream. But she knows that Woods has thrown in a faster time, so she's really got to try and put the hammer down. And being low in that upstream that we saw earlier may cost her a little bit. There's a costly penalty. You see again, she's trying to drive high into the eddy, and the bow entering the eddy rose up, water pushed it up, clipped the boat, or clipped the pole. That's going to cost her 5 seconds.
So important, I imagine, also to keep your concentration after making a mistake, because all is not lost. It is a 5-second penalty, not insurmountable if you're very quick through the gates. Let's look at the time here. 1:94.90 points, or again seconds, not nearly what Margaret did on her first run. So Margaret Langford hopes that first run will stand up. Here is Joanne Woods. She was second after that first run.
All right, Woods coming down again. She was second, but she had a 5 penalty touch on the first run. She's nicely across the jet there. Look at that. Able to get up high in the gate there, and she's paddling very, very well. She looks like she's got a lot of confidence in. Interesting, as you said, she'd been feeling ill earlier in the week. Let's watch her in across this critical move. Very low in that gate. That should cost her a lot of time. Let's see if she can keep her boat speed up.
The time she needs to beat is 1:74.98. That was posted earlier by Margaret Langford in the first run.
Well, I'm real curious as to how much time Woods lost in that, because as we've said, you want to stay high in the upstream. She's high there, but she was not high in that upstream we just watched a little while back. Let's watch her down through the bottom part of the course. She's lining up for what we call the offsets. There are 2 gates offset from the center line. You've got to move from one to the other. She's going to paddle a little bit upstream to get over to the second offset.
Again, the green and white gates you have to go through downstream. The red and white gates you have to negotiate, as she is doing here, upstream.
Nicely one-stroking, and the real question is how much did that being low in that upstream we saw earlier cost her? Because the rest of her run looks very, very solid.
Here's the final gate, gate number 25, 400-meter course. And the water fairly rapid, fairly rough here on the Animas River. Plenty of snow this past year in the San Juans. 1:72.96.
That has moved her into the lead. That's a great time. Here is the woman that could beat her.
Kirsten Brown-Fleshman. She had a disastrous first run. She was slow and also sloppy. 110 seconds in penalties.
All right, she's lining up now. Oh, Drew, it looks like she's missed that gate. Yeah, indeed, she is eddying out. She looks like she's going to be paddling back up to get it. That is incredibly costly. This is going to take her an awful lot of time. She knows that the winning time now about 1:72 with some change, and this will just about put her out of the race. There is no way she'll be able to make up that much time. You can see her now pushing off the rocks. Great effort. She will not be denied. She knows she doesn't want to take the 50, but at this point now she's just racing for the show.
She is an Olympic hopeful, but this is not the day for Kirsten Brown-Fleshman. She was 10th on the tour last year. She feels she is far better, but again, not her day. But it was a day for the Canadian Joanne Woods and also Margaret Langford. They finished 1-2 in women's single kayak. And right now, standing by with our winner, Lamar Sims.
Well, on the second run, I decided that I had to pull really hard on every stroke if I was going to move out of second and into first. And so I tried to do just that, stay on line and still pull really hard, keep the boat moving everywhere. So I did that.
Obviously, it worked for you. Again, congratulations on a great race, Joanne Woods.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back with men's single kayak from the Champion International Whitewater Series in Durango.
Flatwater Sprint, Whitewater Slalom. These are the men and women of the U.S. Canoe and Kayak team. The USCKT provides...
Rich Weiss won the event. Donald Johnstone was second. Patrice Gagnon, a French-Canadian, was third. And standing by right now with our favorite, Lamar Sims.
You had a great race last week, and we're feeling good as we go into the race this afternoon.
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I had a good race, and I've had a good week in training. The water here has been really high, and it's been pushy, and it's knocked a lot of people around, and it's knocked me around some. So the course isn't too hard, so I think it should be pretty good.
Okay, well, Rich Weiss, best of luck in the race this afternoon, and best of luck in the series this summer.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks very much, Lamar and Rich. And as we near the top of the 40-boat classification, here's Fabrice Olive of France. His fellow countryman, a gentleman we saw earlier, Terry Humeau, said that the water here on the Animas River reminds him of the water in northern France, where he grew up. And I have to ask you, Lamar, characteristic-wise, what makes up the characteristics of water and of a river?
Well, the boaters talk about feature. One of the things you look at is the gradient, the drop. You know, basically we're talking about water flowing downhill, and we want to know how steep it is. The other thing is what kinds of, is it a ledge pool type of thing where you've got water flowing over a large ledge, almost kind of dam with some chutes in it, or a rock garden where the water's flowing around boulders. This is more of a rock garden with a couple of major drops in it. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. Also, we're talking about how wide it is, very pushy as opposed to narrow technical waters like we had in Bale last week.
Fabrice Olive continues to make his way down course 400 meters in length, and he has a bit of a problem there, but he negotiates it without a penalty. 400 meters in length with a 6-meter drop over those 400 meters.
Olive working across the ferry now, and he looks to be having a good run. He's right on line, right through the middle part of the course. Let's watch him in the upstream. He's got a good move in the upstream. There's the one stroke that we were talking about, driving back out into the current. Now watch the offsets, because these are very tricky. The water is a little slower here, but the offsets are fairly far apart, and it's a tough move to get over there. No problems for Olive coming down to the bottom part of the course. As I said, a good run, a little bit of a bobble there, and it makes him low in the eddy, but he's able to convert it. A great one-stroke move, good boat speed, and it looks like he's having a great run.
You used the term offset. That term means?
The fact that the gates are offset from a center line means the athlete has to move back and forth across the river, and you want to do it with all forward and control strokes. They can be very difficult to do.
Fabrice Olive with 150.09. Here is Eric Jackson from originally Merrimack, New Hampshire. He now makes his home in Atlanta. And while we have this moment, congratulations to Atlanta, Georgia. They will be the home of the Summer Olympic Games in 1996. And boy, Eric Jackson would love to be there.
Drew Slalom was back in the games in Barcelona in 1992, and we're hopeful that we'll be back in 1996 in Atlanta also. Jackson, a very, very powerful paddler. You see him right in the upstream here, and now driving out. Bow sweep, and look at this, a little bit of a sweep stroke to drive the bow back upstream and across the ferry and into the downstream gate here, and then lining up for the upstream. Let's watch him as he's high in the upstream. Let's watch the ferry now to what are a couple of difficult offsets.
He has a clean run going so far. Eric Jackson of Atlanta. He was 4th in this event at the Olympic Festival last year in Minnesota. He is the reigning national champion. He was 11th in the World Cup last year.
Watching Jackson now towards the bottom part of the course into those offset combinations that we've been talking about earlier, all on the forward strokes, keeping the boat's speed up. You don't want to be using backstrokes, and now into the upstream there. One stroke to the upstream, back out into the current, and he's having a good run down towards the bottom part of the course.
Our fastest time thus far, 150 and change by Fabrice Olive, you saw a moment ago. Here's the final gate and the sprint to the finish by Jackson.
You can see that electronic eye there on the right-hand side of the screen there. And there's a great time, 145.76. That has moved him up. Here's Donald Johnstone out of New Zealand coming down through the center part, or the top part of the course. Let's watch him as he drives across the jet here.
How are the boaters in New Zealand? You spent some time down there.
Well, I had a chance to paddle Johnstone way high in the gate there. That's a great move. They've got some marvelous rivers down in New Zealand, and the Kiwis took me in, showed me a great time, and they've got some wonderful paddlers. Johnstone there, as you see him spinning quickly and then driving across the ferry, across that big jet that we've been seeing so many times before, and into the upstream. That's just pretty paddling. Look how high he is in the upstream, in and out in one stroke, and there's that little sweep stroke that we were talking about with Jackson.
And let's see if he does it as well as Jackson. He hits a hole there for a moment. And let's see how he goes back through the upstream gate.
You can see there a little bit of the edge control. You see these boats are very low on the water, kind of flat deck, and the athletes use the edges to help spin the boat, cut the boat, and you could see him leaning away from the paddle there to use that edge there and stop the cross-stream momentum. There, Johnson again, a little bit of the offside lean that you can see him helping control the edge of the boat, control the boat.
1:45.76 is the time he needs to beat.
Johnson has been a top paddler in international competition. He could easily move into the top. Watching him now working down towards the finish. He's got good speed, good paddling. He's not flailing.
1:44.76. That is 1 full second exactly better than Jackson. So Johnstone now with the time to beat. But here is Rich Wise, who won last week at Vail, the top American in this event.
Watching Richie now coming across, spinning and driving across that big jet into the upstream that we've been talking about. Remember how high Johnstone was. And there is Richie, just about the same thing. Let's watch to see if we can see that little sweep stroke. You see his bow start going downstream, and then he drives it back up. He's paddling well.
He was a national champion in 1987. Rich Weiss, extremely strong. He has bench pressed over 300 pounds. In fact, a very gifted athlete. In high school in New Mexico, he was a two-time state champion in wrestling. And he spent a good deal of his time in the Rocky Mountains. Made his home for a long time in Steamboat Springs. And while we're talking about his athletic talents, what attributes physically are best for a kayaker?
Well, you want to have strong upper body strength, and we're not really talking about arm strength here, but good strength in the shoulders and the torso, because that's where a lot of the power comes through in rotation. The off-season athletes will do some dry land training and a lot of on-water training to work on that kind of strength. In addition, of course, you've got to have good anaerobic threshold because you are really pushing yourself for 2 to 3 minutes.
His sprint, 1:45.22, so he doesn't quite get the time of Johnstone. That after the first run. Keep in mind, we'll come back. There will be a second run. The New Zealander has set the pace, followed by a pair of... The second stop, Durango, Colorado. And you don't have to be an expert to go down the Animas River. Certainly, that dog does not look like an expert. Many commercial boaters make their way down the Animas River every single day once the weather turns. And not the only mode of transportation. There is also the Durango to Silverton Railroad, one of the big tourist attractions in southwestern Colorado. It makes its way through the canyon and the San Juan Mountains to Silverton each and every day. You can do the whole thing in one day, a return trip. Many backpackers are known to head on up through the San Juan Mountains and spend a few days in the National Forest hiking about and then taking the train back down into Durango. The town of Durango is located near the Four Corners, where, if your heart desires, you can place part of your anatomy in the states of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado all at once. A little over a century ago, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang wreaked havoc in these parts. In modern Durango, there are many shops and fine restaurants, stores for Southwestern art and Native American crafts, as well as many factory outlets. And when the snows come, thoughts turn to heading downhill on skis. And within 30 miles of Durango, a world-class ski resort in Purgatory. And always in Colorado, an abundance of sunshine. In fact, Purgatory boasts that it's the warmest place you'll ever ski. And today it's quite warm, unless, of course, you are floating down the Animas River at breakneck pace. John Brennan knows this river well. He is from Durango, a local favorite.
Well, John is really coming on in the last couple of years. He had a good trials, not made the team yet. He's a little low in that gate there, for example. But he is really developing into a fine paddler. I expect that we're going to see a lot more of him in the next several years. This is his home course. He's very comfortable, and he wants to do well on this race here. Watching him coming down, and you can see a little bit, you see the judge there signaling clean. The way that these races are scored is we've got judges up and down the river that indicate whether a paddler hits the gate, and there the closed fist, no touches, or an open hand to show a 50.
And in bib number 7 is Scott Shipley from Paulsbo, Washington. And being a kayaker runs in the family. His older brother, Paul, was a member of the 1986 United States team. And Scott just 20 years of age.
Scott had a great team trials earlier. He made the team #1 boat on the first day. The team trials is 2 days. He is really developing into one of the top paddlers in the world. You can see him. He's got very long forward strokes, reaches way out in front of the bow, and has just got great power coming across the offsets that we talked about earlier, using all forward and draw strokes to drive the bow where he wants it to be. Scott right on line coming down through the bottom part of the course. Let's watch him. A little bit low in the upstream there, able to keep the boat speed up, but he's a little bit off the line there.
He began boating at the age of 6, so he's a veteran even though he is only 20. He had a time of 1:55.86. So much better, but still not good enough to eclipse the earlier time of Donald Johnstone.
Has to do a deep race, almost rolled, and that's going to cost him because it's put him off of his stroke line a little bit. Let's see if he can make the transition. He's able to get in the gate. It looked to me like he touched the gate a little bit with his back. If so, that would be a 5-second penalty. Let's watch it on the slow motion. Watch his right shoulder there. You can see the gate moving back. He's clipped it with the back of his right shoulder into his back. And that goes back to that part where you saw him bobble, saw him lose the stroke and get off the line.
And the judges obviously picked up on it. It is not only important, obviously, to have great technique. Body English helps a little bit also. Here is Eric Jackson. He was 3rd after the first run.
Watching Jackson coming across the line, and he's got great boat speed coming across that eddy, driving very, very high. Look at that. 1 stroke see upstream and back out into the current. That's a great move. I watched Jackson earlier, and I talked about just power, and you can see him really manhandling the boat, driving it around with the very, very powerful sweep strokes, pulling in with the draw strokes, and keeping a very high stroke rate.
How much does fatigue play a factor here on the second run?
Well, these athletes, again, have been training pretty much all year. At this level, they really are not going to be feeling that much of a difference. A number of times people have better runs on their second run because they've only had 1 practice run. That in the first run, so they're more comfortable with the course. They've got a couple of hours of recovery time in. That shouldn't play that much of a factor.
Jackson from Atlanta, Georgia now, originally from New Hampshire, makes his way through the bottom section of the course.
Okay, we're watching him in his upstreams that we've been talking about earlier. 1 stroke to the upstream there, and he really looks like he's right on the line here. He's keeping good boat speed up, driving into the last upstream over here at gate 24, and then back out into the current. 1 stroke's that one, and then on to the sprint down through the finish.
1:45.76 his time in the first one. 1:44.76 the time to beat. He's a 1/2 second faster, but still 0.6 out.
All right, Johnstone here, now your current leader after the first run. We just saw his time up on the board. Let's watch him down through the really fast jet and he is just so fun in big water. Now, he's low here. You remember on the first run, he was much higher in that eddy, so that's going to cost him a little bit. And that's where we're talking about how you make up tenths of seconds, hundreds of seconds that really add up over the course, because as you've seen, these races are separated only by tenths of seconds or seconds barely in some cases. Johnstone now driving into the center of the course, way out in front of the boat. He's got good forward lean, keeping his stroke rate up. And now he's got to cross that tough ferry into the upstream over by gate 12. Beautiful paddling, very high in the upstream.
And he's still very, very clean. He'll have to have a terrific run to eclipse that marvelous run he had in the first run.
Well, it's interesting. We're seeing the top boaters all having those times of around 1:45. Johnstone's the only one that broke the 1:45 mark on his first run. And so he's really trying to just solidify his position.
The athletes want to be peaking around this time because just a few weeks away, the World Championships in Tasin, Yugoslavia.
All right. Johnstone, a key New Zealand paddler who will do very well, I believe, in the World Championships. And I think some of the other racers we've seen here from the U.S. will also do well. But let's watch him as he finishes the course now, Drew.
He's looking to better his own time, 1:44.76 for Donald Johnstone of New Zealand. Another excellent run, but not quite as good as his first run, but he remains in first position. Here is Rich Weiss from the United States. Very, very close on the first run. He was in second position. Can he be a little bit quicker?
Well, I think Richie definitely has the ability to put in a faster run. He knows it, and really that's where the pressure comes from. He knows he's got to be right on line all the way down and just a little bit faster than he was in the first run. And the question is simply working down the course. If he doesn't have any bobbles, if he's very smooth and on line, he should be able to do that. Watching him now, you can really see him just stroking out through the entire course, coming into the upstreams there and keeping the boat speed up, looking very good in the top part of the course is Rich Weiss. Great edge control. You see the way he was using the edges, drive the bow up and back across to ferry across the water. Again, wants to stay high in this eddy up here, and let's watch to see whether he's able to keep the bow up as he comes out of the jet. Bow swoop down a little bit, and then back up and into the current.
That was a nicely done turn.
Oh, Richie just is marvelous in powerful and big water. You know, he's a wonderful river runner. He's very comfortable in this kind of water, and it's the kind of course that he can do very well on.
Weiss so far has a clean run. Again, he needs to be under 1:45, several tenths under 1:45.
He is one-stroking every single one of the gates, the upstream gates that we've seen so far. And that's really where the time has got to be made up. So if he's able to do that, he will stay very high in the standings. Again, one stroke in the gate over there at 20 and now working through the upstreams.
Oh, he had a bobble. Yeah.
There we go again. You see that? You see the edge caught. Let's watch it in slow motion. He's driving over to the offsets. He's thinking about 21 and 22 now. And there you can see as he takes the sweep, his edge catches a little bit. The upstream edge comes up and touches the gate.
Very, very close, but no question he touched the gate. So with that 5-second penalty, he will not have a chance at a top prize. But Rich Weiss goes ahead and finishes 150.98, so he would have finished in 145.98, which would not have been good enough. His first run will stand up for second position. Our winner, Donald Johnstone, and it was a very close race. The top four all within about 1.3 seconds. And let's hear from our winner, Donald Johnstone.
That's right. I use these races as a build-up for the World Championships, and I thought I could get some good competitive whitewater here, and it's turned out, you know, with the US team showing up and Canadians and the French, you know, it's been a really good series.
More whitewater excitement. River, and last week in Vail, Joe Jacoby and Scott Strasbach took top honors in the men's double canoe. And after the first run, Michel Assadi and Jerome Deval of France had the fastest time. And we'll pick it up in the second run. And this is a newly formed team. Scott Shipley and Rich Weiss have never been in the same boat together, and I imagine that should cause some problems. Individually, they're very good, but in tandem, you have to work together for some time to figure in a competition like this, Lamar.
Well, they have paddled a little bit together before, but really they're both kayakers at this point and top K1 boats. It is a tribute to their great ability that they're able to work this well together in the boat, because they're really looking right on line coming down here through the course. Both of them have years of river experience. They've played, and Scott did some canoe boat or seaboat racing early, but they have not really raced together.
What is the key to double canoe and racing together? Obviously, both boaters have to be on the same page.
They've got to spend a lot of hours together in the boat because there is not that much verbal communication. You just have to know what your partner is going to do and trust that your partner is going to do the right thing all the way down the course.
And they're actually having a pretty clean run to this point. Rich Weiss and Scott Shipley.
Well, they're looking very smooth. They're a little low in the upstreams, as we've talked about before, but what they want to do is try and stay in the gates, stay right on line. If they can make all the gates and be clean, they should do fairly well in this class. The class is a little thin this week. There aren't that many of the top boats here, and so they could move up.
180.47 the time to beat, and they have an excellent time of 172.47.
Coming down here are your current leaders, Jerome Deval and Michel Saidi, after the first run from France. This year they did not make the French national team. They have represented the French in international competition for a number of years. They are simply a marvelous team. They work well together. You can really see just the timing on the strokes. They're both stroking at the same time, and they've got great power coming in, and let's watch them here on the upstream. They're on the crossbow driving right into the gate. Very nice on the top end.
I want to go back for a moment to the run of Weiss and Shipley. 8 seconds faster than the best time of these two gentlemen in the first run. Are you surprised at how well they work together?
I really am. As I said, they are wonderful athletes, both of them. They know water very well, but Saidi and Michel have got, or Saidi and Deval have got so much time in the boat together that I would expect them to be far ahead of Weiss and Shipley at this point.
They'll need to be better than 8 seconds faster than the time they put up a short while ago.
Watching now, there you can see the experience coming through in and out of that upstream in one stroke. They had a touch on the first run. It looks like they're having a great run here, so let's watch them as they sprint down towards the finish and see where they figure out.
Again, 172 and change, the time they need to beat. That was Rich Weiss and Scott Shipley. They sprint through 171.94, so 7/10 better, and they'll sit in first position. But still to come, this boat, the tandem of Joe Jacoby and Scott Strasbaugh. The winners a week ago in Vail, Colorado.
Watching Joe and Scott coming down the course, they have represented the United States in international competition for a number of years. They are really one of our top two boats, and this is a good course for them. They've both come off injuries over the winter, but they're both paddling very well right now. And look at that, very high up in the upstream that we've been talking about, and there you can see the experience coming through.
This boat should fare well, this tandem, next year in Barcelona in the Olympic Games.
Watching come through, you've got to remember, Drew, that the boats here, the C2 boats, are a little bit longer and a little bit wider than the canoes and kayaks and the one-person events. There's a touch there. You see the pole swinging? That's got to hurt them. They had a touch on their first run, so they know that they've got to be much cleaner on the second run if they want to move into the lead, and that's going to be very costly.
171.64 is the time they need to eclipse, so they'll have to be in the 166-second range. They'll really have to fly down here through the final gates.
Well, as I said, they've a very talented team, a lot of experience, but I don't know that they can cut down to that 165, 166 range. Looking at the other times from the first runs, I think it's somewhat unlikely at this point. I think that touch is going to be very costly for them on this second run.
These two train together in North Carolina. They spend a ton of time on the water and a ton of time in the same boat together.
Oh, they've got hours in the boat. I had a privilege of training with them in Costa Rica a couple of years ago. They're both wonderful individuals, and they really taught me a lot about paddling. They just understand whitewater very well, and training techniques. Very thoughtful men, both of them. Coming down now on the final sprint, and let's watch to see whether they're able to cut that time down.
No, 173.05, though the time would have been very, very quick. It would have been in that 168 range. But the champions are Sadi and Deval of France. Then Shipley and Weiss, newly formed team. They come in second position. And then Jacoby and Strasbach.
Flatwater sprint, whitewater slalom. These are the men and women of the U.S. Canoe and Kayak team. The USCKT provides support for athletes in the Olympic sport of canoe and kayak racing with the goal of bringing home the gold in 1992. You can help ensure the success of the United States in Barcelona and beyond by supporting your local paddling club or the U.S. Canoe and Kayak team. Call 317-237-5690.
There's a place in the winter sun with a warm and friendly mountain, Purgatory, Durango. Enjoy